My fellow Americans, it's Anthony Fantano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and I'm running for president. Come join me, support me, vote for my platform. A free turntable for all and not one of those ones that ruin your record. A good quality turntable for every household. Also a house for you to put that turntable in. People deserve a place to live. We're doing healthcare. Racists will get sprayed down with squeezy cheese. And if Zuckerberg doesn't add trending topics to Threads in the next 2 months, every billionaire on the planet is going to get roped together into a giant human centipede. That's my plan for America. This message is supported by the Anthony Fantano PAC for president. Thank you.
This is Joe Biden. Even I endorse Melon Man for president. What are you waiting for?
Hi everyone, it's time for another episode of Let's Argue, where we go on the internet and we take your hot takes, your unpopular opinions, your tough questions, and I respond to the best ones. That's what we do. That's the whole point of this thing. Yeah, I'm gonna respond to that internet slop. Let's do it, huh? Meh. People who say old rap was better have no idea how much of the same shit was put out in the 80s. I've listened to a lot of 80s rap albums recently, and there is very rarely an album which I can even consider good or unique before 1988. Okay, I think maybe that's a little harsh in terms of, the amount of good rap out there pre-1988, but this kind of gets into the sentiment I was just talking about with the nu metal stuff. Every era of music has its crap, has its trends, has its, kind of cheap aesthetics that everybody's kind of copying over and over and over and over because that's just kind of the flavor of the moment. So it's kind of easy to go back to the golden age of hip-hop sometimes and see like, oh, wow, all these records back then were fire. Yeah, that's because those are the albums that are the easiest to find and scrounge up because all the terrible ones aren't as easily searchable or just aren't in the discourse these days. So the past allows us to have almost like a halo effect and everything with a lot of those old records. That being said, for a modern hip-hop listener, for a newer hip-hop listener, I can see going back and listening to some of that 80s stuff, so especially that early 80s stuff, as being a bit jarring because the instrumentation and the production was kind of rough, was rudimentary. I remember having a conversation with a music fan about this very thing, and he was younger than me, and he referred to some of the beats as sounding like pots and pans. And while there were some very good rap albums back in the 80s, I don't think the genre really kind of hit its stride in terms of album craft until the 1990s. So look, while obviously the 80s were a pivotal time for hip-hop music, a formative time, no era for any genre is a perfect one. Keep in mind. I think artists should stop complaining about the Spotify paying rates and instead start putting ad reads on their songs. I think this is the logical solution to the issue. This is kind of an interesting proposition because part of me feels like that would make music so terrible and so horrible that the crowd would react to that negatively to the point where maybe there is some kind of outcry to pay musicians more so that they're not having to ruin their songs like this. But another part of me fears this plan would backfire and audiences, being as indiscerning as they are, would not really care or even like this, and that the whole issue would worsen and become absolutely awful, and you would have 4 or 5 brand shout outs per song. And artists are already doing that sort of shit in their music videos. It's increasingly becoming more of a thing on TikTok as well, as it becomes easy to just, throw, a random brand or whatever in a TikTok video. I know you're mostly being silly here and everything like that, but I do honestly feel like this is a bit of a preview into just another way down the road capitalism will further ruin music and art. I mean, it's already pushed things to a point where it sort of necessitates chasing after trends and streams and so on and so forth, and basically being willing to compromise how you create and what you do in just about every way possible. There's more to house music than just playing music inside your house. I mean, there's more to garage than just playing music inside your garage. I hate this tweet. I hate it. Nu metal isn't a trashy genre and changed mainstream rock and metal for the better. No, it was pretty trashy. I was there. I enjoyed that shit when it was popular, and there were lots of regrettable bands that I was into as a result of it. Yeah, a lot of headaches, a lot of cringe, a lot of tackiness, a lot of redundant bands just kind of copying the same crappy ideas. And look, that's not to diss the genre as a whole or say that nothing good came out of it. Yeah, lots of good records and, awesome influential bands came out of that era of metal. But that totally ignores the fact that at the time it was a feeding frenzy of crap where everybody was just, again, like trying to do the same terrible music with only a handful of acts making records that legitimately withstood the test of time. So in a way, I'm not really seeing how it could have possibly changed things for the better, especially since these days I hear so little new metal influence on, like the main stage metal scene. I still think most artists out there are kind of like afraid to touch that stove in fear that they'll remind some fans of some of those old crappier bands or be mocked for being like them. But I'm not against in general the idea of some of these sounds and some of these vibes coming back, as long as there's like, I don't know, some kind of standard going on. And we're not just like writing bad macho rap metal shit that doesn't actually mean anything. After some period of time, eventually an artist has spent more years being an artist than they have as a common Joe, which leads to the possibility of their art starting to feel disconnected. Though sometimes there are exceptions, Taylor Swift, Kendrick Lamar, etc. This is an interesting perspective to explore. Not even that I totally agree with like your assessment that Taylor Swift relates to the average Joe. Or even that she needs to, but it is true that after a certain point, a lot of artists and celebrities of various stripes do kind of ascend to a certain level of relevancy, and with that often comes maybe an obliviousness to the struggles and everyday experiences of regular people. And sometimes that can become painfully obvious or exposed in a way when that artist says something or maybe performs a song or comments on something in a way that, comes across a little bit awkward or out of touch. Or is just like, blatantly false in a way, as many people have kind of noted on, the huge hit from Beyonce's last full-length LP, Break My Soul. The bars on that track where Beyonce is like singing about working. Like everybody knows that Beyonce is like not doing a 9-to-5 right now. An artist, in order to be good, talented, worthwhile, someone who you should listen to, they don't need to be in touch with every single thing that you're going through or what people generally are going through in order to make great art or good music or whatever. Monday is better than Tuesday. I kind of agree. There may be some who hate that take because you don't want to come back into work off of resting and relaxing off of a weekend. But if I had to pick between Monday and Tuesday, I would say Monday, because if you're picking a work day, I'd rather it be the day where you're kind of fresh, you're back, you're ready to get like into it, start some shit, get something done. By Tuesday, you're beginning to get to a point where it's like, when's Friday gonna get here? When's Friday coming? Kind of Blue is a boring album, and I hate that it gets recommended by default to get into jazz. I have so many friends who don't get jazz, and it's always because they get recommended that snooze fest, for example, yeah. Okay, look, I get what you're saying here, but, music recommendations should be on a case-by-case basis. I don't think, for jazz, you should just, recommend Kind of Blue, regardless of what that person who is trying to get into jazz is into. Like, if someone who who's a music fan, is more into music that's hype, that's explosive, more visceral, maybe Kind of Blue is not the record to go with. However, I do understand why that album gets recommended. Because if you're talking to somebody who typically listens to pop music or popular music, music that is not as improvised, they may not be used to listening to those long, extended jam sessions. They may not, be used to listening to the more complex grooves that you would get out of a bebop record, a hard bop record, a free jazz record. I get it. The solos on Kind of Blue are super chill. They're easy to digest. They're very sweet. They're very melodic. There's nothing too, sort of head scratchy or jarring or confusing about the rhythm section or the walking lines on that record. It's just a very easy jazz album to listen to without being like, too soft or like soulless or, squeaky clean like a Kenny G record, something like that. So, I mean, while it's not the most exciting jazz album of all time, the performances are really good. Look, if you have a friend who's already listening to like crazy, insane, rhythmically and melodically intense and technical, metal or rock or jam music, whatever it may be, maybe you don't go Kinda Blue. Maybe you recommend them a harder or more, experimental or more adventurous or more exciting record. I mean, that's fine. But you guys are the best. Love you. That's going to be it for this episode of Let's Argue. I will see you guys in the next one. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Argue, music forever.